Alright guys, Anthony here with Also Start With Skill. Again, working on this idea of combining weapons, combining treatises, looking at things under a lens of another system, another version. And one of my favorite kind of crossovers it was going to be the topic of classes I was to teach during the year. I figured this is a good time to kind of take the concept, take the things we talk about a lot, and kind of really bring them home. So I was talking with a picture. This is talking about rapier mixing into sort of butler. And I've kind of said at the beginning with my understanding of 133 that 133 really feels like a lot of proto rapier. It's a much shorter blade, but at least going up the cylinders that we have available, a little bit more forward heavy, a little bit more cut focused, or cut averse because we feel that cut is sort of out and gone. And I really find myself really wanting to work the thrusting, work the close binds with that system. Fast forward 300-ish years to Greece and his work, and I have a lot of the same, same concepts that I struggle finding with sort of butler. You know, book tree is very not descriptive as far as manuscripts goes. It's got missing pages, things like that. There's a lot of stuff that kind of take apart from being applied as a system. And I felt like I always felt like I made it work, but there's like language describing reading some of the recent work really kind of brings home the other concepts I was trying to explain with my own degree and how you apply it to other things. And so I'm going to kind of finish that tonight and just kind of really quick synopsis, really quick overview of looking at that, and then of course we'll look at something else as well. So as I've talked about ad nauseum in other videos, Reese has two books in his manuscript. And the second book that we're going to tonight, specifically the first rule of how to fight with the rapier. And this rule, I love it, it's hilarious and simple, and I totally admit I will oversimplify it to kind of drive it home. The fact of the matter is that Reese says if you're going to fight somebody and they're across the room, rule one is I hold my sword forward like this and I just walk it. At some point, our sword is going to cross, and depending on what they're doing, they're going to get stabbed. And this, if you study any German manuscript, this is all, I'm saying, taking the board, striking verse, making it want to react to you, react to what you're doing. And it definitely sets a trend for a lot of how I believe fabric should be looked at and interpreted. A lot of that information is really critical for understanding this first book, this book one, of these little set plays, these little vignettes, or German vision, Stuka, things of that nature. But at its core, I'm up, I'm in whatever guard I want to be, I'm going to be all proper and do everything here. All I'm doing is I'm driving and walking through, and again, there's often those reactions. If my opponent, sees me coming in and tries to turn away and set my sword aside anyway, they're not actually getting out of half of the sword, so you just keep walking the extra step and you stab them. If they kind of push it off really hard, you're either going to, again, they're going to regulate, you're going to catch their weak on their strong, if they blow back and forth, if you prefer, and you just set aside and come through. Maybe push that really hard, then you can just wind out a second and walk through and move through, which is something very similar to the Duke Aaron in the German Oxford edition. So there's a very clear carryover of how these things start to work and starting to apply. And I really love just taking this idea of what everyone wants to think of like a really fancy finesse weapon. It's like, no, I'm just going to walk across the room and I'm just going to go like this. And the other person goes away. And it's a really, I find a really fun example of how dynamic rapier can be. It really highlights, and I'll put myself up to this, how unaccurate my personal fencing is with rapier to what the teachings say we should be doing. But it really makes you start wondering, looking at other things and how to do that and things like that. We're going into sword buckling, which is definitely my favorite to kind of dig into setting steps over. I will concede I did not grab the right sword, so it's a little bit long, but still same issues. I can't really throw a lot of cuts. Any cut I throw is going to carry past my target, and I feel much safer working with sword and buckler. Definitely. Other things of note worth mentioning, kind of highlight what we're doing here, is 1-3 gives us forwards, gives us defensive positions away from the fight. They give sieges, which is how you attack the person in the fight, but there's not a lot of description or intention of in between I move from one to the other. But really kind of looking at the ideas of fabrics and this idea that I'm always moving forward, always attacking in, it definitely applies to the ideas of sieging and moving and attacking. So, for instance, half shield, a common digging position, and I'm going to care what it looks like. You can grab the sword however you want, but just know that the sword's out in front of you, pushing forward, and not dissimilar from this, right? Yes, I'm going to change my body posture because I'm going to weapon. I don't have to take my hand safe, so I can buckler up there, keep my hand protected. Otherwise, the difference between walking in fabric guards, versus weapon, and walking in half shield are actually negligible. Right? It's a factor of the weapon we're fighting, but not a factor of how we should be fighting. So once I start looking at that, you can start realizing, like, oh, I should be stepping in to my siege and keep moving through. Once you start doing that, you start creating that sort of dynamic, motion dynamic rhythm in your fight. A lot of things in 1-3 start making more sense, right? We're not going out of signature where we're kind of cutting in, then go to a siege, and then do other things, right? We are instead walking in into a covered position, walking into a guard, charging to a guard. Honestly, if you want, you can sit here and half shield and charge across through the other person and get similar, if not the same, sort of results. The other person knowing what you're doing is its own drawback. It's also its own benefit because the problem with the rapier is if someone wants to be like this, you're not really thinking about the fact that they're attacking you. You're just watching this sword point get closer and closer to your chest. So starting the same thing would apply to sort of buckler, where I just go to my guard, my siege, I just walk through and whatever happens. And that can apply to half shield, apply to some of the weird sieges like crook, where I'm up like this. And I'm just telling my opponent what's going to happen. And basically I get to react to whatever I want to do from there in the same way. With that said, I'm definitely a bigger fan, and Faggus does go on later in his book 2 to say, okay, so I'm not going to step there the whole time. The other week we can go finding the sword and things like that. So instead of walking at the half shield like that, building into other systems of, okay, now as I come close, now I'm going to find my attack. If members are attack guards, are the only guards we have. There are offense, there are defense. 1-3 is different. We have boards for defense, sieges for attacking. So now instead of marching across the room in half shield, I can walk across the room normally or going through whatever fancy positions I want, and then stepping into half shield as I get closer. But at its core, this idea of starting out distance, closing that distance, time to find the guard, time to find my motions, all those other things really start to honestly blur together. And you can go even further back and recall the straight parry setup we did last or a couple weeks ago. From here, gather back, go through. We start doing the same thing with this motion, where we can come out to our half shield and maybe the opponent has an act again. Maybe it's saying, I'm going to have the same straight parry play from here. So you can actually come out a close distance safely, keep the threat away from myself, working towards that line, working to close in that space to keep myself safe and in control of my opponent's weapon. So all that is really just a long convoluted way of saying that all of us, most of us, are fencing far too statically. And we have at least one source explicitly saying, Everest, that we should move in straightforward and not sit outside of this safe range, right? Just charge in, drive through. We see that in pseudo-Doberman, 2227A, I believe, talking about you just leave in your pets high and low opposite sides until you make a wound or something exciting happens. We have 133 with its very vocabulary saying, here's where I defend myself. When I'm attacking, I go into something else. And I'd argue along those same lines, we should be passing those positions quickly and dramatically and explosively so we can A, threaten our opponent, B, control their reactions, control their intentions, and also control their weapon to make it work. In conclusion, I do want to grab a sword because I think it's a really fun eye over as well. So the same rule already applies to the console, right? We can quite literally start off in long point and walk through, looking for a line to react off of, or something else, right? We start playing all those games we've talked about before in the past, right? So instead of walking up here, long point, you can just start across the room. Long point, rapier guard towards your opponent, and then making them react to you as long as you're always driving forward, always driving towards your opponent. It's definitely a fun way to change up how you fight, change up your roles, change up your intentions, and keep your opponent a little back way, kind of unsure of what's going on. My favorite full interpretation of this is instead of looking at guards as guards, which we definitely see in things like Meyer and other sources that these semi-positions we don't want to sit in. We hear that explicitly repeatedly in various places, but places we move through. We're teaching ourselves how to work from set positions and set options. So yes, guards can be defensive, but they can also be basically your firing platform, your way to move up to a position, you threaten your opponent, and things of that nature. This stuff we've kind of touched on indirectly, I think, the last couple of weeks, but very explicit now. Now I'm thinking about my guards, not only as places I can just start my fight from, because it's easy to work from here, we can work from here. Now as I go up, I'm going to step in to a guard. And now I've become a different thing that they're used to seeing or what they're expecting of me. I'm going to sit here and wait. I'm going to play this 50 seconds. I'm going to go, I'm going to attack. I'm going to attack. I'm going to step up. Maybe I step to the long point. Make that reaction, force that attack. Maybe I step up to flute. Or I can sit here, work my attack, work from here. It doesn't really matter what guard I move into. But I'm really going to think of these guards as this is how I move closer to make an attack, to make something happen, and initiate the fight. So really thinking about breaking down the ideas of, okay, I need to come up to my opponent, coach from the right shoulder, and working from here, things of that nature. This mindset also, for me, gives a much stronger, use index for guard breaking, right? Guard breaking in longsword, right? If they approach you in left ox, well, no one's going to, maybe someone will walk up to you like this and stand really close to you, or they shouldn't be like just sitting here all day. They should just be sitting here all day. Like, all right, this is what I'm giving you, this is what's going on. However, now if I come up with normal, and I come through and I'm getting out of that position, now the guard breaks have a much better window of use, a window of opportunity, where it becomes, okay, they set themselves up in this position and are about to attack, right? This kind of becomes now they're going to be driving through here and throwing this out and coming forward immediately. With that sort of intention, with that from the loose out that's onsetting and intermediate thrust, now it becomes, oh, they're making this attack to come in, they're going to left fluke, right fluke, I should answer that with the guard break. Things like that really start to highlight their utility, highlight how they're used and applied much better across the board than saying, okay, so they're sitting in this guard, they're not really moving. Anything you kind of throw, they're just going to step away from. That's not how the guard breaks are usually some that are effective. Once you start applying this motion, this implied threat is always approaching your enemy. They're coming out, they're walking up like this. Once you're adding that constant forward motion, these guard breaks, these transitions become, these sieges, if you will, become much more meaningful, much more threatening. At the same time, by the virtue of the proxies that is physics and sword fighting, much more vulnerable to the proper guard breaks against them. And again, guard break isn't about I win buttons, they are instead you're going to get a better bind than your opponent is. But if you don't know how to guard break, or you don't realize what guard you're moving into as they quickly run an attack, it becomes a much harder skill to use and apply. So this isn't just like, oh, I'm exposing myself to counter positions. This becomes, oh, because I'm driving in forcefully to make my attack, because I'm just constantly sieging the enemy, they have less time to react and see what guard is going to happen and how to react to it appropriately. So that's kind of my soapbox for tonight. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's my project that I've been working on for the last year or so, and just kind of highlighting how we can be mixing weapon systems, mixing weapon styles without sacrificing like the so-called integrity of them, right? Just because I move how the base tells me I should move, it doesn't make my German longsword any less of the German longsword, because there are gaps in that fight system, right? There's no way of knowing how they want us to fight. We do know they don't want to sit in one guard. We do know they want us taking the board. So it checks off those boxes, and now we have a much more clear understanding, or clear potential understanding of how those motions should be applied, how they should be interpreted, and how they can be used effectively in a real scenario. So, just a quick recap. Get through all the good bits. According to Fabris, in book 2 of his Art of Dueling, rule 1, starting position, you play no proper structure, walk at the other person until they check. It does have options if they react, if they're doing things, and yes, I'll totally concede this is the least impressive thing, but at the same time, if someone just starts charging at you across the hall with your sword out, you've got this much time to do things. If they kind of come like, okay, I'm here, and we take this, that's too much time for them to react and do things. But if they're just, all right, we're out and we're at it, and driving through, it's far more effective than you expect it to be. We take that idea of always moving forward and start looking at 133, which gives us sieges and ways to attack other guard positions, other people, different postures. And we start looking like I can either start straight far away, apply this, or like Fabris talking about finding the sword that gives us a much better idea, a much better tempo of I'm in a safe position, I'm in an attacking position, and now I'm close enough to wound the opponent. In a position where I know I have a good idea what's coming, I have myself safe, I'm going to close that distance quickly and easily. Lastly, we can pull that all the way through to, I guess, back up to longsword, which is going more recent, super early, somewhere in the middle. Where now instead of, like, we can just literally start long point and walk through and drive the attack. And that is useful and effective if you have that courageousness that they talk about. If you have that confidence to just walk in like, okay, their attack's probably going to go here. I'm ready to deal with that, be able to quickly change my mind, get out of that position, cover myself, but now I'm closer, now they're swinging at my blade, not me, and I'm doing other good things in the German tradition. If you look at the sieges, starting in guarding the siege instead of like just carrying defensive positions, now it can become much more like, okay, I'm going to step into this guard so I can launch my attack from here, knowing that my attack is going to drive them to counter and to react instead of they're just going to swing in my face. So using these guard positions not only as places to launch your own attacks out of, but the places you move to quickly and dramatically, so you can attack from there much easier and much better. So I hope that makes sense. If people have comments, I'd love to hear insight and feedback on this. Otherwise, we can get another February's video out for you on Friday, and we're back on Monday with more Juju. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.